In a world ruled by demigods, champions, and monstrous legends, one of Elden Ring's most haunting figures is not a conqueror at all, but a frail young woman. You don't meet her in a throne room or some blood-soaked battlefield, but in a forgotten corner of Caelid, sick, abandoned, and fading away. She has no army, no crown, no weapons to brandish, and yet, from the very first fragile encounter, her story begins. A quiet journey that will test your loyalty, refine your honor, and force you to consider what it means to help someone whose end has already been written. This is not a tale of a minor companion. It's a story of willpower carried to its breaking point, of pain both inherited and endured, and of the strange gravity of kindness that draws you deeper into another's tragedy. To walk beside her, whether to heal her, fight her, or even stand against her, is to discover that Millicent's path is bound as much to your choices as it is to her own. So today, we trace her journey, from her first labored breaths within a rotting church, through battles, betrayals, and the weight of her cursed inheritance, to the final decision that still divides players to this day. Along the way, we'll unravel the threads that bind her to Malenia, uncover the deeper truths behind the Scarlet Rot, and ask why her quiet struggle leaves such a lasting mark in a world already drowning in sorrow. Our first step into Millicent's story doesn't happen by accident. It happens because we've stumbled into one of the most desolate corners of the lands between, the heart of Caelid. Everything here feels hostile, not just in enemies that attack, but in the air itself. The Scarlet Rot eats at the land like rust through iron, a constant reminder that even gods in this world can't create without destroying. Tucked away in this nightmare is the Church of Plague. It's not grand or ornate, but the runes still hold a kind of quiet dignity. The candles inside are long dead, the walls are streaked with decay, and in the middle of it all is Millicent. When you first see her, she's not the fierce warrior she might become in your memory later. She's pale, frail, her voice shaking from the effort of each word. She's dying, and she knows it. And that's when the game quietly does something brilliant. Instead of framing her as a quest marker or a damsel in distress, it lets her humanity come through first. She doesn't beg for help. She doesn't declare her destiny. She simply tells you her condition and leaves the choice to you. Of course, if you've spoken with Gowry, the strange, hunched figure in the nearby shack, you already know what's at stake. Gowry presents himself as a kind of guardian, a caretaker. He tells you Millicent suffers from an advanced form of Scarlet Rot, and that only one thing can save her: the unalloyed gold needle. This isn't just any item. It's a relic, crafted to ward off the influence of the outer gods, to halt the Rot's corruption. Gowry describes it with reverence, almost religious awe, because its very existence defies a power that even the gods of the land between fear. And here's where an author's perspective comes in. Elden Ring doesn't waste words on why you should help her. It trusts you to decide. But the framing is deliberate. By placing Millicent in the Church of the Plague, surrounded by the silent weight of her own mortality, the game taps into something primal. It's not about loot. It's about whether you're willing to risk your time and safety for someone whose life has no tangible benefit to yours. That choice is the first test of your empathy, and it sets the tone for everything that follows. The hunt for the unalloyed gold needle leads you into battle with Commander O'Neill, a fight that's less about skill and more about persistence. The swamps filled with Scarlet Rot around this arena are an extension of Millicent's condition, a physical manifestation of the thing that's killing her. When you win, the needle you recover isn't perfect. It's broken, flawed, as if even the possibility of saving her is already fraying at the edges. Gowry, however, tells you that it can be mended. By the time you return, Millicent's condition has worsened. Her voice is softer, her breaths shorter. But when you hand her the needle, she doesn't cry out in relief. She doesn't suddenly leap to her feet. Instead, she thanks you in the same calm, measured tone, as though she understands that this is only a temporary reprieve. This is an important narrative choice. Most games would use this moment to tell you she's safe, that you've won, that the problem is solved. Elden Ring doesn't do that. It lets the quiet linger. The rot is slowed but not cured, and deep down you both know that the fight against it has only just begun. If the Church of the Plague was our introduction to Millicent's fragility, then the next stage is where we see the shadow she lives under. And it's not just any shadow, it's Malenia's. The first time you hear the connection, it might feel like a throwaway detail. Gowry lets slip almost casually, speaking of Millicent's uncanny resemblance to the blade of Miquella. Malenia, the most feared swordsman in the lands between. The very same Malenia whose name alone makes seasoned warriors hesitate. But the resemblance isn't just in the face, it's in the rot. Malenia was born cursed by the Scarlet Rot, her body in a constant war with itself. Millicent, too, bears that curse. And here's where FromSoftware's writing shows its teeth. It never outright says they are mother and daughter, or clones, or anything as neat as that. Instead, it builds the connection out of implication. Millicent is one of several sisters scattered across the land, each touched by the rot, each echoing Malenia in their own way. And as a player, you start to realize the tragedy in that. If Millicent is a fragment of Malenia, whether by blood, by magic, or by something stranger, then her life was never truly her own. She exists in reference to someone else. Her identity is defined by another person's curse, another person's legend. When you meet her again after the Church of the Plague, she's no longer bedridden. She's moving, traveling, her spirit's stronger, but she's still chasing something she won't name, and she keeps you at a careful distance. That's another sharp bit of characterization. Millicent doesn't immediately become your champion. She's not standing around waiting for the next task you'll do for her. She's got her own path, and you're only intersecting with it. From an author's perspective, this is a clever inversion on a common RPG trope. Normally when you help someone in a game, they attach themselves to you, becoming part of your journey. Millicent doesn't. She stays her own person. She's grateful, but she's not beholden. That independence makes her more compelling. She's not just a side quest, she's a parallel protagonist. And that parallel is important, because her story, like yours, isn't one of fighting against something inevitable. For you, it's the fraying of the lands between, the decay of the Erdtree's order. For her, it's the Scarlet Rot. Both are slow-moving dooms that can't be completely undone, only resisted. In the background of this all, Malenia looms larger and larger. Every time you piece together more of Millicent's story, you learn more about Malenia too. Not through tales of her battles, but through the quiet reflection of someone who shares her affliction. And slowly, you start to suspect that Millicent's journey might lead you straight into Malenia's arena. But before that inevitable collision, there's a thread that pulls you deeper into Millicent's world. Her search for her sisters. Millicent's journey is not just about her own survival. It's about what people tied to her by something deeper than family. Her sisters. In the world of Elden Ring, the term doesn't mean blood relation. Sometimes it means shared origin, shared fate, or shared curse. And for Millicent, it means all three. The first time you hear about them, it's almost incidental. Gowering or passing NPC dialogue hints at other women touched by Scarlet Rot. But when you actually encounter them, they're not sitting around a campfire swapping stories. They're scattered, fragmented, and in many cases, hostile. The Sisters of Rot are an inversion of what the word sister normally invokes. They're not allies, they're not here to comfort each other. They are rivals, competitors, even predators. In a way, the reflections of what Millicent could have been if her heart or her will was shaped differently. From a design standpoint, this is an ingenious choice. It lets you explore variations on the same character archetype without breaking the player's emotional investment. In Millicent, you get to see her what-ifs made flesh. A sister who embraces cruelty. A sister who lusts for strength at any cost. A sister who hides behind obedience to the Rot's will. And every time you defeat one of them, it feels less like vanquishing a stranger and more like erasing a possibility. Lore-wise, these sisters are tied to Malenia's own legend. The most accepted interpretation is that they are all products of the same origin, fragments of Malenia's being, either born through unnatural means or cultivated by the Rot as a kind of echo. And here's where the ambiguity is key. FromSoftware doesn't hand you a codex entry with the truth. They want you to live in the tension between theory and fact, the same way Millicent must live without full knowledge of what she is. Thematically, the sisters force Millicent into a moral crucible. She can walk the same path they do, serving the Rot's spread, dominating others, or giving herself over completely. But she doesn't. She tries, in her own quiet way, to resist. And resistance comes with a cost. This part of the questline also deepens a player's role in her fate. You're not just watching Millicent navigate the web of blood and curse. You're shaping it. Each encounter with the sister is another chance to decide how far you'll go to help her, and each decision pushes you closer to the climax of her story. From an author's perspective, these encounters are where Elden Ring storytelling shines most brightly. They aren't just combat challenges, they're narrative mirrors. You're not only fighting enemies, you're fighting the possible futures of a character you've grown attached to. And because this is a FromSoftware game, the outcome isn't neat or painless. The path through the sisters leads you deeper into the Haligtree's orbit, and deeper into Millicent's acceptance of her fate tied to Malenia's. That thread finally pulls taut when you reach the snowbound waste of the consecrated snowfield, and stand at the threshold of the Elful brace of the Haligtree. That's where the choices you made begin to carry a weight you can't undo. By the time you reach Elful, the air feels heavier, not just because of an impressive design of the Haligtree's final bastion, but because you know the story is nearing its breaking point. Elful, brace of the Haligtree, is one of those places in Elden Ring that feels like it was built to grind the hope out of you. The Rot is everywhere, blooming in grotesque bursts across the stone, spilling into the water, turning beauty into disease. It's Malenia's stronghold, but it's also a graveyard for anyone who thought they could master the Scarlet Rot. It's in this place that Millicent's journey forces you to confront one of Elden Ring's rare, true moral crossroads. Up until now, your choices have been about whether to help her in small ways, offering her a needle, defending her from enemies, keeping her alive just a little longer. But here, you're asked to take a side in a fight that will decide the rest of her life. You find her beset by her sisters, the last of them, more dangerous than any before. And Elden Ring does something unusual. It gives you two separate summoning signs. One lets you enter the fight on Millicent's side, cutting down her would-be killers. The other lets you side with her sisters, turning your blade on her instead. This is where FromSoftware's design philosophy hits with full force. They built Millicent as someone you've probably grown to admire, or at least pity. She fought against the inevitability of the Rot for as long as she's known you. She's shown gratitude in a world where kindness is rare. She's proved she has a will beyond what the disease demands. And now, the game tempts you with a way to betray her. Why? Because that temptation says more about you than it does about her. Choosing to defend Millicent is a natural continuation of her arc. You help her overcome her final trial, and she survives to see another day. But FromSoftware is never content with letting victory feel clean. Even if she lives, her body is failing. The Scarlet Rot is not something you can beat in this world. It's something you can delay, perhaps redirect, but never erase. And so, even in victory, her future is uncertain. If you choose to fight against her, you sever her story early. It's not without reward. Siding with her sisters nets you unique items, and in terms of gameplay, it might feel like the more profitable choice. But narratively, it's an execution. You're killing the only version of Millicent who resisted the Rot's call, ensuring the disease will go unchallenged. Either way, the game makes you feel the choice. The arena isn't just a backdrop, it's a stage for the culmination of everything you've shared with her. The snow and rot mix underfoot, the Haligtree looms in the distance, and the music swells with a mournful undercurrent. You can't pretend this is just another fight. From an author's standpoint, this is one of Elden Ring's finest narrative tricks. It forced you to weigh loyalty against personal gain, empathy against pragmatism. And because the game never tells you the right answer, You're left with the knowledge that your decision is entirely your own. If you fight for her and win, Millicent thanks you, but it's the kind of thanks that feels like a farewell. She knows her journey is nearing its end, and she's not afraid to face it. And if you side against her, the silence after her death says more than any line of dialogue could. No matter how you choose, this is the point where Millicent's story stops being about possibility and starts being about inevitability. If you fought beside Millicent, the immediate rush of victory fades quickly. She sits there in the aftermath, a quiet figure against the room, and there's no grand speech or cinematic flourish to mark the moment. She thanks you, yes, but it's soft, almost apologetic, as if she's burdened you by surviving. She tells you her fight is done, that she's tired, and you can see it in the way she slumps, and the way her breathing hitches. It's not the relief of someone who believes they've been saved. It's the resignation of someone who knows their borrowed time is running out. This is one of those moments where FromSoftware's restraint becomes its greatest weapon. They could have filled the screen with exposition, explaining the irreversible nature of the Scarlet Rot, but they don't. Instead, they trust the player to feel it. You've been with her long enough to know her victories are always temporary. The needle kept her together, but not whole. Every battle she's fought has been a holding action against an enemy that doesn't tire. Later, when you return, you find the truth. She's gone, not in the violent, immediate way so many characters in Elden Ring, but in a manner that feels almost too human for this world. She passed quietly, leaving behind only the unalloyed gold needle. This is her final gift to you, the only tangible proof she was ever here, and it's loaded with more narrative weight than most artifacts in the game. The needle's significance runs deeper than it first appears. In gameplay terms, it can be transformed into Miquella's needle, an item capable of resisting the influence of the outer gods, specifically the frenzied flame. But narratively, it's a piece of Millicent's will, the same will that refused to succumb to the Scarlet Rot, the same will that sought agency in a world designed to strip it away. By giving it to you, she's passing on that defiance. If you choose to betray her, there's no needle, no final connection, just the hollow feeling of a branch cut before it could flower. The fight might reward you with loot, but there's nothing in it that matches the quiet gravity of finding that needle resting on the ground where she once sat. And it's here, in this absence, that the game makes its sharpest statement about Millicent's arc. Her story was never about carrying the Scarlet Rot. It was never about grand victories or the kind of triumphs that can be measured in enemy health bars. It was about living with a burden that could not be lifted, and still choosing to move forward. It was about kindness exchanged in a world defined by cruelty, about finding the courage to act even when the ending was already written. From an author's perspective, her death, peaceful or premature, serves as a mirror for the player. In saving her, you're rewarded not with continued companionship, but with the knowledge you made her journey less lonely. In killing her, you're left with a void where the connection might have been. Both outcomes underline the same truth. Your actions carry weight, but you don't get to choose the shape of the ending. The last time we see her, whether it's standing victorious or finding her body later, she is alone. In a game full of grand, cosmic horror, that's one of Elden Ring's most grounded tragedies. The quiet, unremarkable death of someone who mattered, not because she changed the fate of the lands between, but because she changed yours. Millicent's journey ends far from where it began, but her presence lingers. Not in the same way a demigod's legacy does, not with castles, armies, or entire regions carved in their image, but in a quieter, subtler way. Her story threads through the player's memory, surfacing unexpectedly when you find the crimson flower in the rotted swamps, or when you see another NPC in Elden Ring struggling against a curse they can't outrun. She's often called Malenia's shadow, a living echo of the blade of Miquella's own struggle with Scarlet Rot. The resemblance is deliberate, but Millicent's arc offers something Malenia's never does: resolution. Malenia is locked in a stalemate with her own affliction, frozen in that moment of the Aeonian bloom. Millicent moves forward, not in denial of her fate, but in spite of it. That choice, to act, to fight, to travel, is what separates her from the tragic statues that populate the lands between. So when you ask the question, who is Millicent? The answer isn't found in her lineage or her ties to Malenia. It's found in the moments you shared with her, in the battles fought side by side, and the silence between. She's not the strongest warrior or the most important figure in the lands between. She's something rare. A person who took the little time she was given and used it to make someone else's journey less lonely.